Hey everyone, I'm Kevin with Victory 4x4. In this video, I'm going to walk you through our roof rack installation on this 2015 Toyota RAV4. To get started, you can kind of lay all your pieces out like we have here. You're going to have two of these identical side rails, a front and rear fairing, and 7 crossbars. So we'll begin the assembly of the rack by mounting these crossbars to the side rails. The big thing you want to pay attention to here is you're going to be looking for these 2 slots that we mill into each crossbar. Those are so you can drop the T-nuts into these slots and slide them so that you can mount your accessories accordingly later on. Those we just typically make sure are facing up and all to the same side. And then you'll just need 2 of the 1/4-20 button heads for each one. We do recommend that you take a little bit of anti-seize lubricant and put on each of these bolts before threading them into the crossbar. And then using these horizontal slots in the side rail, you can begin threading those in place. Once you get both of those started, you can temporarily take a 5/32 hex and just kind of center these for now. That's going to look best visually, and then you may just need to move them later on as you get your accessories mounted to accommodate those different accessory widths. Now you'll just repeat that same process all the way down one side rail and then jump over to the other side and work either front to back or back to front and get all of those installed as well. Now after you get all of those crossbars bolted in place, you can move on to installing both the front and rear fairings. Now the first step in this, you're going to want to take the provided edge trim, and basically what we're going to be looking to do here is cover this entire bottom edge pretty much from point to point. So you can just kind of start this lightly on one end and just kind of spread it out along that edge. Doesn't have to be too critical. And then get over to this other side, and you can just kind of mark it with your thumb where you want to make your cut. And then take some sharp shears, or like these tin snips I have here, and just cut that off. Now this is an aluminum impregnated seal, so if you get any small pieces of that protruding out of the end, you just want to make sure you pull those out of there with a pair of pliers or something. Get them out of the way so they're not going to contact either the fairing or the paint once this is installed. Then you can just take that piece you just cut, and working from one end to the other, just fully press that into place on the front edge of this fairing. So then once you have that edge trim in place, you can take this fairing and slide it down between the 2 side rails here on the front of the rack. And then you'll use more of those 1/4-20 button heads you used on the crossbars. However, this time you're going to back them up with serrated flange nuts here on the inside. So once you get all the hardware in for that fairing, what you want to do is just push it all the way down and then lightly snug a couple of these bolts up for now. We'll make final adjustments to that once it's up on the vehicle. Now your rear fairing is going to install in pretty much the same method there at the back. However, you'll just take the leftover piece of edge trim you had remaining after cutting that to length on the front and place it here in the center of the rear fairing. Now we're going to move up here to the roof of the vehicle. We need to get this factory rack removed before we can get ours in place. So for this, you can start with these upper covers. You're going to have these on all 4 corners. They're going to be very similar, both front and rear. This one's going to have 5 little locking tabs, 2 on each side and 1 here at the back that hold it in place. A couple of these are admittedly broken already on ours, as we've had this apart a few times, but basically what you need to do is get a small plastic pry tool like this underneath, and you can kind of pry up, releasing those clips. And then you're going to have 2 up here at the front, so you'll just need to slide back to release this from the rail. Once you've done that, you can get your fingers behind here, kind of down on the inside, and pull out, and that'll release the side clips holding this lower section in place, and then just push in to release the inside clips. And then again, you'll kind of just lift up and slide back to free that up. With that out of the way, now you can access these two fasteners holding that corner in place. So you need a 12mm socket to get those removed. Now once you've done that and removed the hardware on all four corners, you can grab a hold of this whole assembly and lift it off of the roof of the vehicle. So before you actually get your mounts in place up here on the roof, you're going to want to make sure to come in to all four mounting locations and clean this entire area with something that's going to be streak and residue free. So I just have a simple glass cleaner here. I'm going to spray that off and wipe it clean. So now after you have that cleaned, I'm just going to walk you through kind of how these front mounts install before showing you how we actually put it in place with some sealant. So basically your front mount is going to be two pieces. The bottom one is going to have these larger mounting holes that sit down here on the roof with this stepped flange that goes in towards the center of the vehicle. And then from underneath, you're actually going to install the two provided 5/16 elevator bolts. And then what I'm actually going to do is put just a little piece of tape across here to help temporarily hold those in place and up off of the painted roof surface once this is bolted in place. Then on top of that, you'll take the upper mount half, place it on those two studs, and install the 5/16 flanged nylock nuts to hold that upper mount section in. So I went ahead and taped those studs to the bottom of this mount to hold them in place. And now I'm going to take my black RTV and we're just going to run a nice kind of medium-sized bead around each of these factory bolt locations. That way the mount sits down onto this RTV, kind of squashes it out a little bit, and gets a nice watertight seal here. Then I'll take the lower mount section, drop it down in place. You kind of want to squash it down on the two little kind of plastic guide pieces that protrude through the roof from the factory. That should center it in place. And then you'll take a little more RTV and essentially fill those holes, or at least kind of cover the top here, and that way your mounting hardware passes through that, again just to get a watertight seal here to the top of the mount. Now for mounting hardware, we're going to provide you with these 8mm button head bolts and corresponding washers. So go ahead and drop those in and get them started. Then you'll need a 5mm hex. You can kind of push this mount all the way in towards the center of the vehicle and then tighten these up. And then I may have forgotten to mention, but each of these mounts is also going to have corresponding forward-facing arrows, as well as it should be an F and an R to indicate front and rear mounts. So now we're going to take the upper mounting section, drop it down on those studs or elevator bolts, and install the nylock nuts. And then with a 13mm socket, we're going to tighten these up, but leave it just loose enough that we still have our in and out adjustment here. So then the installation of the rear mount is going to be very similar. These, however, are just going to be a one-piece mount. Again, just look for the R designation in the forward-facing arrows. These round holes are going to mount down against the roof, and the vertical slots will go out to the roof rack rails. So just like up front, you'll place your RTV around each of these little factory guide pins. Then just set the mount down in place. And go back and kind of fill those holes. And then again grab the 8mm button head with a washer and drop those down into place. And again, tighten with your 5mm hex. So then you can grab a friend to help you place the rack up on the roof of the vehicle. So after you get those mounts in place, you'll grab a friend to help you just carefully set the rack up here on the vehicle, kind of just straddling outside of those mounts. And then with more 1/4-20 button head hardware, you'll start lining up these side mounting bolts to the vertical slots in those mounts. After you get all this mounting hardware started on all 4 corners, you can come back and loosen up these fairing bolts that you installed earlier, and that'll allow you to adjust the side rail height along the side of the vehicle. Basically what you're looking for as you go to do this is that you've got this rail sitting nice and parallel to the side of the vehicle as you kind of step back and eyeball that, and then just making sure that you have adequate clearance between the crossbars and the vehicle roof surface once everything's tightened in place. Once you're happy with all that, go ahead and tighten these up with your 5/32 hex. So now if you haven't done so already, you want to make sure to come back and tighten these front mounting halves together. Now you're ready to set both the front and rear fairing height. Now one thing we are going to recommend you do before setting these in their final position is picking up some of this clear paint protection film, and then you'll simply kind of mark out where the front edge of this fairing is going to be and place a strip of this underneath that edge trim to just protect that paint over time from any dust, dirt, and debris that might get stuck in there. Once you get that paint protection film in place, you'll simply push the fairing down tight to the roof surface, and then again using your 5/32 hex, you can begin tightening these fairings in place. And now on the rear fairing, that adjustment procedure is very much the same. You're just going to need a shorter piece of that paint film in the center just to go under that edge trim. And then as you tighten this down, you can just kind of double check from side to side that the gaps along here are nice and even before tightening this up. So once you've done all that, your install is complete. Now if you have any questions about this rack or any other Victory product, feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at info@victory4x4.com or give us a call at 269-459-8447.